Welcome, everyone, to the NoDQ.com live recap of AEW Dynamite for Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. We have AEW Revolution this coming Sunday night on pay-per-view, and it's also available on Amazon Prime. Now, of course, you have to pay $50 for it, like you would on any of the other services. I went with Triller TV since you can get the bundle. You can get Revolution and Dynasty for like $85, which is $15 off. If you bought both of them, you would be spending $100. Not too shabby. It's a small discount. It's something. We opened up the show with MJF. He was outside the arena and he said he wanted to prove a point to Adam Page's Shitty Mark fan club. MJF got very fired up, very angry. He was calling out Page to fight outside in the streets of Sacramento, and he told Page to saddle up and ride. MJF was very enthusiastic and ready to fight. We had our first in-ring segment, which was a contract signing. Everyone knows these are my favorite segments of all time, the old contract signing with Ricochet and Swerve Strickland. I'll give them this at least. Last week, they did the bit where you had Prince Nana presenting the contract. He went to Tony Khan. He had this contract. So at least there was a logical reason to do the contract signing. Whenever they do that, I can be a little bit easier on it. The segment was all right. Ricochet had his backwards hat on, and he was doing his trash talking that he's been doing as of late. He did not have the robe. He was in a suit. He said the robe is getting some updates. He said Swerve is lucky to be getting a rematch, but Ricochet agreed to it because he wants that opportunity at the AEW World Championship. By the way, Calvin Bowman was asking where was Tony Schiavone. Schiavone was in this opening segment as the moderator for this. Beyond that, he was not on commentary for this show, which is fine. Tony Schiavone is great, but at some point you have to focus on some new people. Now, Ricochet signed the contract, and Swerve had a response. He said that Ricochet is an annoying, entitled prick. He said that Ricochet made the mistake of leaving him breathing. And now, when Revolution is over, Swerve says Ricochet will be remembered for two things. Number one, Swerve briefly reviving his career. And number two, his ring announcer wife. Ricochet got pissed off about this and pulled out his scissors. He tried to use the scissors, but then Swerve revealed his own scissors. He stabbed Ricochet with the scissors, and Ricochet was busted open. You know what they need? They need Psycho Sid. Well, unfortunately, Psycho Sid passed away. It's too bad because if Psycho Sid was alive, they could have had Sid as the special guest referee for this match. It's a shame. Like that would be fitting if anybody gets that reference. All in all, the segment for a contract signing, it was all right. The scissors deal. I'm sure we're going to see plenty of that. Both guys will likely be bleeding. They're going to be stabbing each other with various things. Unfortunately, Steve-O, I forgot for a split second that Sid had passed away. You know how sometimes you hear about people and you're like, you thought they were dead, but they were actually still alive? And this was the reverse of that. I thought for a split second Sid was still with us. Unfortunately, he's not. Very sad. He should have been alive for the Hall of Fame. Just saying. By the way, I will be giving my prediction for this match at the end. I'm going to be doing my predictions for Revolution after I finish the Dynamite recap. So stay tuned if you're watching live, and if you don't care about Dynamite but you're curious about the pay-per-view and you're watching on demand, you can always skip ahead about 20 minutes into the video. Usually I go about 20 minutes with the recap here. All right, let's get to the first match of the evening, which was a tag match, 8-person tag team match. Will Ospreay, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Powerhouse Hobbs against Brian Keith, the Bad Apple, Brian Cage with a different spelling, Lance Archer, and Mark Davis. Brian Cage on Dynamite, you know what that means. Ospreay's team had the early momentum, but then Brian Cage tagged in and he got his offense in, got in some moves. He's the strongest and biggest guy who never really wins when it matters. That's the story of Brian Cage's career. And you had Don Callis with the cheap shots on the outside to Orange Cassidy. And I like how the big men, they each took turns holding up Orange Cassidy for this very delayed vertical suplex. But of course, Orange Cassidy eventually tagged in to Hobbs. Hobbs was coming in and he was doing the meat spots. He was going at it with Davis, going at it with Cage and Archer as well. We had lots of meat chants here. And then Brian Keith tried to attack Hobbs and got the UF'd up chants. And then Davis was able to powerbomb Hobbs to regain the upper hand. Then Will Ospreay tagged in. Things broke down. Ospreay was doing his big moves. And then Mark Briscoe took out the murder monsters, because they're not really monsters. They look the part, but they aren't really much of anything. They're like Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. Let's be real here. And then Brian Keith, of course, the Bad Apple, the guy that took the fall here, no surprise, got beat by Ospreay with the hidden blade. Good guys win. Absolutely no surprise here. You see Will Ospreay on one side and you see Brian Cage on the other side. You know how this match is going down. After the match was over, we had the immediate attack, trademark AEW, with the post-match attack. Mark Davis coming in, and then the Monsters, I guess, did something useful. They powerbombed Hobbs on the steel steps, and then Kyle Fletcher came out there. He then had Mark Davis use a chair on Will Ospreay, and Mark Davis felt, I guess, guilty about this. Maybe at some point Mark Davis is turning. I don't know. I don't really care. And then Fletcher put Ospreay through a chair and got the last laugh before the pay-per-view. Do I think that Fletcher is going to beat Ospreay? I'm not going to say, because you're going to have to watch to the end of the video to get my predictions on Revolution. Segment was pretty standard. We had a video package for Kenny Omega versus Takeshita coming up at the pay-per-view. Stay tuned for that. We then had Adam Copeland, or Cope, going up against Wheeler Yuta in a match that probably was way longer than it needed to be. Wheeler Yuta, he's basically Tozawa. What Tozawa is to American Alpha or Alpha Academy, whatever you want to call them, that's what Wheeler Yuta is. He's like the Disco Inferno of the NWO Wolfpack. That's what Wheeler Yuta is. But they ended up going way longer than it needed to be. Adam Copeland, of course, beats him with the spear. Yuta did get in some offense, but we're just looking at our watches, waiting for Copeland to beat him. And Copeland did, in fact, beat Wheelie. And you know what? That might be disrespectful to Tozawa. Copeland got the win, and then after the match, Copeland shook his hand and said that he actually respects Yuta, saying this is what respect feels like. He then left, and Jon Moxley showed up, Moxley was furious that Wheeler was not able to get the job done and was perhaps being talked into being a good guy again by Copeland. Wheeler just walked out on Moxley after Moxley pie-faced him and got in his face. Then Moxley cut a promo. He's all alone now, and he said Copeland has rattled the cage, but now the bars, he said the bars were there for Copeland's safety. And Moxley is very fired up. He's going to do it alone. Yeah, we'll see about that. I'll believe that when I see it. And again, I'll give my predictions here in about 10, 15 minutes when we get to the AEW predictions for Revolution. We had a training video for the Outrunners. They will be facing Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin for the tag team titles at Revolution. It was what it was. The Outrunners, without giving away my prediction, I feel like it's 3-4 months too late for these guys. It very much was like a one-note novelty gimmick that has kind of already run its course, in my opinion. They did not strike when the iron was hot, and now it's a little too late. We had MJF once again outside. Adam Page had not arrived. MJF called him a coward, said he's not the main character of AEW, and then Adam Page showed up in his truck, and he nearly ran over MJF. MJF ran away. Page then got into the arena and thought he caught MJF by the entranceway, but as it turns out, it was a lookalike. And MJF had set this up. He beat up Page, but then Page fought back. They were in the ring. Page went for the buckshot lariat, but MJF was able to counter it. And he gave him a low blow. He had a shirt on. It said MJF did nothing wrong. And then MJF, he used the Dynamite Diamond ring, had lighter fluid. He was going to set him on fire, but then officials ran down to stop him. You know, this was a cool angle like 20 years ago when Kane tried to set somebody on fire. Now it's just kind of lame. The whole segment, MJF with the Dynamite Diamond ring, it's like we've seen this story many times before. It's really stale. Like, the match should be a hell of a match, but like, this did nothing for me. And, you know, the officials came out there. They stopped MJF. What's funny, this segment actually worked in the negative sense of before Dynamite, I was torn. I'm like, I don't know who's going to win between MJF and Page. And after this segment, now I feel more confident with a prediction. So it actually worked in a negative way, at least for me personally. Like, I think I know who's winning this now. And before I was very uncertain. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. 9:20. You know what happens here. It's the women's segment. Lump all the women in the 9:20 to 9:40 period. They do this almost every week. We do get our occasional exceptions. Maybe they'll get a main event once every 6 months, or they'll get the opening match. But typically, they're thrown in this 9:20 to 9:40, 9:45 time slot. We had a tag match. Kris Statlander and Thunder Rosa versus Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Solid women's match here, but fairly standard. Megan showing off her power. She picked up Ford and threw her over the top rope onto Kris Statlander and Thunder Rosa. And then after the break, we had the babyface comeback. Kris Statlander tagged in, and then Thunder Rosa and Statlander were working well together for a while, but then Megan Bayne was able to gain the upper hand and then picked up the win with her finisher, the Fate Descent. She beat Thunder Rosa. Yeah, Thunder Rosa's stock has plummeted quite a bit when she's the one taking the fall here, the former AEW Women's Champion. Remember the Thunder Rosa pop? Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, the injury definitely set her back, and she barely gets on Dynamite now. You know, she's mostly on Collision, and yeah, pretty sad because she was one of the top stars of AEW at one point. I just feel bad because she could have been the face of the company. I think back to her and Britt Baker and that feud they had during the pandemic, and now both of them, especially Britt Baker, are struggling to get TV time, and when they do, they're not winning. They're not really building up any kind of momentum. Yeah, and Jamie Hayter said she's dealing with visa issues, but yeah, her stock has plummeted too. Megan Bayne, though, seems like she might have potential. Like she's got a great look. She's a powerhouse. So there is a shining spot in the women's division. And after this, we had a backstage promo from Mercedes Moné to hype up her match with Momo at Revolution. Just a promo to get her on the show. No stopping the Moné train, yada, yada, yada. And here was something in the middle of all the women's segments. We had Max Caster showing up. He's the best wrestler alive, and he does these open challenges, and he's trying to get the fans to chant for him. He got interrupted by Jay White, who accepted the open challenge, and the crowd chanted "You effed up," and it was basically a one-move match. Blade Runner, immediate win for Jay White. I mean, not that it really matters or anything, but yeah, Max Caster's career is dead. And I was talking to Matthew about this on Facebook. Max Caster is Giovanni Vinci from a couple months ago. He's dead in the water. Like Max, if AEW was going to do a round of cuts, Max would be on it. Like it's over for him. Character is dead. There might be hope for Bowens. I don't know, but I haven't really seen much of him lately. Caster's dead in the water. And the most interesting thing about this was the post-match promo from Jay White. So Jay White brought up how Moxley is all alone, and Jay White is going to be there to see the new AEW World Champion. Something tells me there's going to be a little bit of shenanigans, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. This was a telling promo. We then had a backstage segment with Mariah May. I'm not sure why I wrote White and Mariah, White/Mariah in my notes. Sometimes I have a brain fart. Toni Storm, the women's champion, and Mariah May had a sit down with Renee Paquette. I had Jay White on the brain. I must have. This was a good segment, one of the better segments of the show. Mariah spit on Toni right off the bat and then said the title is nothing without her. And she said she's the woman from hell and she's going to drag Toni Storm down with her. And then Toni said after Revolution, Mariah May is going to be sentenced to a life of mediocrity. She's going to be replaced. She's going to be forgotten. And Mariah is going to find out what happens when you try to kill God. Mariah was pissed. She got in Toni's face. Renee had to try to hold them back. I liked it. I mean, this has been one of the best feuds in AEW, maybe the best women's feud in the history of the company. Should be a hell of a match at the pay-per-view, and I do have my prediction for this, though. So stay tuned for that. And then we had our main event of the evening, which was the tag team match, Ricochet and Okada going up against Swerve Strickland and Brody King. Ricochet tagged in. It was a little setup. Okada took a cheap shot at King and, or actually, I think it was Swerve. He went after Swerve and then King came in and went after Okada. And then all four men were brawling on the outside of the ring. Good guys got the upper hand. Brody King did the crossbody to both Okada and Ricochet, sent them into the barricade, and then Swerve did a double stop as King had both men on his shoulders. Swerve jumped off the apron. Good stuff here from Swerve and King. And then after the break was over, Bad guys got the upper hand for a while. Brody with the hot tag, cleaned house. Then Swerve was back in. Swerve did the stomp to Ricochet, but Okada broke up the pin. And then at this point, we had the breakdown with all 4 guys in the ring. Brody missed the cannonball, and then Okada grabbed the Continental title, one of those titles. He was going to use it, but the referee stopped him. However, while the referee was distracted, Ricochet got the title. He hit Swerve with the title and picked up the 1-2-3 victory. He had the bandage on from earlier when he got split open with the scissors. Ricochet pins Swerve again. So that's 2 wins now for Ricochet over Swerve. Neon sign as to who's winning on Sunday, but you had to get the heat on Ricochet. Maybe they could have found a different way to do it without making it so obvious who was winning. And that was the end of the show. No big cliffhanger, just Ricochet beats Swerve again. I mean, even without this match, I think Swerve winning was very obvious. And this just cemented it even more. All right, so Dynamite, it was okay. I really don't think it did much to get me hyped up for Revolution. I know Revolution is going to be a great show. AEW always delivers on pay-per-view, but I wish I was more undecisive with my picks. Like I want to have all these scenarios in my head, and I really don't. So for that, it was 5. Average, mid, not bad, but could have been a lot better. Okay, Dynamite, 5 out of 10. That's my points for Dynamite. Okay show. Let's get to the predictions for Revolution. And yes, this is what we've come to at this point, where I went in the No DQ group chat. We got like 20 people in there. I mentioned, you know what? Maybe we'll do predictions Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Nobody responded. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do the predictions with the AEW Dynamite recap. So there you go. If anybody really wants to do AEW predictions, hit me up. But if nobody wants to do them, then I might as well just do them solo and do them with the Dynamite recap. We got a lot of matches here because it's AEW. They always put on like 10 plus matches for the show. So let's go over these matches. First of all, we have Okada versus Brody King for the, I believe, Continental title. Okada wins. I mean, Brody King's not winning this. Okada wins. To me, it's very clear. This is just somebody for Okada to beat. He'll probably be champion until All In. That's what I'm thinking. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. And chat room, leave me your thoughts. Leave me your predictions. I'll put up some of the comments on the screen. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher in a steel cage match. Will Ospreay wins. Fletcher got the best of him on Dynamite. Ospreay's the bigger star. Ospreay should win the feud and move on to bigger things. Ospreay wins here. Should be a great match. Could be the match of the night. Could be an early match of the year contender. You know the story. Will Ospreay, pretty much guaranteed a 5-star match. He does all the moves. He's a great athlete. You know what's coming here. Ospreay wins. MJF versus Hangman Adam Page. Like I said earlier on this stream, before Dynamite, I was going to go with MJF to win. But then with the angle here, MJF has him down, is going to set him on fire. So yeah, I think Adam Page wins this now. I was going to go MJF, but they made MJF look so strong here. Adam Page wins it. It's funny how this segment actually made me feel confident that Page is winning. But you never know. MJF could win. I do think this is one of the more unpredictable matches that could go either way. But I still think MJF wins this one. Oh, Page wins this one. Adam Page wins this one. I'm going with Page. Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet. Winner gets the world title match. This is kind of spoiling the main event, but Swerve wins. Ricochet beat him twice. Not going to happen a third time. Swerve Strickland wins. Mercedes Moné versus Momo Watanabe. Mercedes Moné wins. It's a filler match. Somebody from Mercedes to beat. Should be a good match, but yeah, Mercedes retains. You can add the LOL or not, depending on if you like her or not. Hurt Syndicate versus the Outrunners. Hurt Syndicate wins. Come on. Outrunners, like I said, their momentum was 4 or 5 months ago. You were going to push them for a world title match on pay-per-view. Should have been November or December. Too little, too late. Plus, they're not beating the Hurt Syndicate. It ain't happening. Hurt Syndicate wins this. I mean, this could have been a Dynamite match. Shouldn't even be on the pay-per-view. They're doing the 10-plus matches. This doesn't need to be on the pay-per-view. It really doesn't. Hurt Syndicate wins. Timeless Toni Storm versus Mariah May. Should be a great match. Toni Storm wins. The reason I say Toni Storm is this should be the blow-off of the feud. Thus, the babyface should win. And number two, you have to consider who's being pushed right now in the women's division. It's Megan Bayne. She's a heel. Toni Storm wins. Megan Bayne gets pushed for Toni Storm. Pretty obvious to me. You have to go by who they're pushing right now. And that's Megan Bayne. So she's going to be the next challenger, I think, for Toni Storm. Toni Storm wins. And hopefully they can do something with Mariah. My fear is now Mariah is that Tony Khan toy that he might be tired of, and she's going to be stuck on Collision for the most part moving forward. We'll see what happens. Takeshita defending the international title against Kenny Omega. I think Omega wins this. There's really no reason for Omega to be losing. I feel like they're doing Omega versus Okada at All In. Omega wins the title here, and I think they're going to do a title versus title match at All In and merge those titles. They really should. I mean, the international title, the continental title, they could make it the intercontinental title. Well, maybe not, but I really do think they should merge those titles together into one title. So Kenny Omega, Okada, All In. Maybe, we got Dynasty, so they'll Dynasty and Double or Nothing, so they can do a couple title defenses, and then they'll clash at All In. Omega wins the title, and then the main event, Jon Moxley versus Copeland. As much as I would like to see the Death Riders die and come to a very definitive end, I don't think it's going to happen. Yes, Moxley did beat Cope at Grand Slam a couple weeks ago, but Copeland rebounded. He's wiped out the Death Riders, and now Moxley is all alone for the show. But I don't think he's going to be alone. I don't necessarily think Wheeler Yuta is going to swerve. Wheeler Yuta might actually be going in a babyface direction, which I don't really care, but I could see that. What I think might happen here, I mentioned this earlier, Jay White with a very telling promo. He's going to be there to make sure Copeland wins and see Copeland's victory. I could see a heel turn. I think Jay White's better as a heel anyways. I could see Copeland feuding with Jay White as maybe one of his final programs in AEW before he retires for good and try to give Jay White the rub and build him up. I could see Copeland doing that. My prediction is Jay White's going to cost Copeland. Either that or Yuta, but Yuta seems boring to me. Maybe both of them. I mean, that wouldn't shock me either. But yeah, I think somehow, by hook or by crook, Jon Moxley retains. And again, looking at future contenders, Swerve Strickland. Here's the clue. Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet. Swerve Strickland, I'm predicting to win. I mean, I feel there's pretty much zero chance Ricochet wins. So Swerve is going to be the number one contender. They could do face versus face, but my feeling is Swerve will win and will be Moxley's challenger at Dynasty and potentially win the title. Maybe. We'll see what they do. Maybe Swerve wins and then Ospreay challenges Strickland at All In. I could see that being a possibility. And yes, of course, there's Christian, but does anybody really care about that at this point? Maybe I don't think Copeland's winning and Christian cashes in. I don't even know if Christian's going to be cashing it in. They may end up just forgetting about that. Or maybe he'll do it on Strickland when Strickland beats Moxley, which I think is a likely possibility now. It'll either be Strickland or Ospreay. One of those guys will beat Moxley. And then at that point, maybe Christian cashes in. But I'm not predicting it for this show. There are my predictions for Revolution. It should be a really good show. I do think it will be a great show overall. I just wish the matches had a little bit more unpredictability to them. The fact that I feel confident with practically every match on this card, on a 10-match card, they got to change it up a little bit. They got to shake things up. I'm hoping that there'll be a few things on this show that we're not expecting, and we'll get a couple of curveballs. Let's hope so. I would still recommend buying the pay-per-view just because I know they will deliver. They have the track record. They have the talent. When they're out there on pay-per-view, they always deliver. You know you're going to get a great show, but I just wish the build-up was better and they could make these matches a little bit more hard to call. All right, so thank you guys for that. And I did want to plug something for Jeff real quick. For those of you in the Los Angeles area, if you're attending Revolution, there's going to be a pre-show meetup at LA Live, Peacock Place, at 12 p.m. local time. So that's Pacific time, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Pre-show meetup, AEW Revolution. This is from good old JM Jeff Meacham. So make sure you guys go say hi to him if you see him there at Revolution. That will be this Sunday night. And of course, after the show is over, I will be giving my thoughts on Revolution. So check that out. And of course, the live results coverage on NoDQ.com. I'll be posting the results if you're not buying the show. And if you want to know what happened, if you want to recap, NoDQ.com will have you covered. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up on YouTube. Spread the word. Tell a friend about the No DQ channel. Have a great night, everyone. Say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.